All right, you guys, so this is the official start. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this morning for this SpotOn marketing webinar. So as you guys know, we are not a marketing firm here at Zoracle, but one of the questions we get from a lot of our clients is, how do we attract more of our top performing franchisees? And one of the things we've been extremely busy with this month is presenting top performer data to our franchisors. So for those of you that kind of have that information, this webinar will be particularly valuable. Always, we welcome your feedback, your questions after the session. And of course, during, I'm here to kind of field the questions and keep everything going. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Aubrey, and I'm the Director of Business Development here at Zoracle Profiles. Rebecca Monet, our Chief Scientist, will be presenting the information today. So it looks like we're going to have pretty good kind of fill in with everybody. There's still a few more logging in, but we will kick this off. So again, it's going to be recorded. I'll be sending this out after. But thank you so much for joining us, and let's get started.
Thanks, Aubrey. So we're going to talk about SpotOn marketing today. And as Aubrey mentioned, Zoracle is not a marketing firm. We are a psychometric assessment firm. We help franchisors determine what makes a good fit within their systems for prospective franchisees. So our whole focus with our assessment tools is to have a franchisor fit, which requires us to do some top performer blueprints on a franchise system. So we know from a psychographic perspective what makes people compatible and what makes people ultimately perform within a franchise system. What I am is a scientist, my background being in neuroeconomics, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, and behavioral sciences. So the fascination has always been about what attracts people to certain things, including a franchise opportunity, and how do they make decisions around that. So all of our science is built around that, and so it has a natural application to marketing. So I want to talk about two big pieces of that, including the motives and values. And motives and values are the psychological drivers behind attraction. What causes us to say, I'm really interested in that particular business or that particular car or that particular part of the world. So what is it that drives us? What is it that motivates us? And what are the values that are in play that cause us to have those kinds of attractions? So motives and values are actually reported out to you on the SpotOn profile. And those of you that have done top performer blueprints know who your ideal candidate is from a values perspective, and therefore can do some things to attract more of those ideal candidates. But just to break down what these motives are, Stanford Research Institute, which is where we get much of our research and much of our work from, says that basically motives are a combination of motives and resources that determine how you're going to express yourself as a consumer. So we call those buyer motives. So it's a combination of your inner drive, the motivations which we want to quantify, resources, and those resources could be many different things. Behind these motives are values. Values will dictate what motivates you. You're choosing between buying a Mercedes or a Toyota, for example. Your values will dictate what motivates you to choose one over the other. Motives and values are also the only true predictor of behavior, no matter the scenario. If we understand the values that an individual has, we will understand what motivates them and ultimately what their behavior will be. So we're also going to be pulling in this other piece that if you haven't studied already, I think you're going to find fascinating. And it's this neuroeconomics piece, which is the psychology of decision making. What is the process that the brain goes through to go through a mass amount of data and information and ultimately make a decision? What does a prospective franchisee do to process that information about franchise system 1, franchise system 2, franchise system 3, and ultimately choose amongst those options? So it's a combination of these motives that we talked about, these values, which are oftentimes unconscious, and it's also a bit of neurological excitement. So where we are actually engaging various neurotransmitters and hormones that will have us spend our money in a particular way, or the opposite, save it. These same neurotransmitters and these hormones will allow us to take certain levels of risk or be more risk averse. It'll also allow us to see things as much more overwhelming versus, manageable and something we can get through. So we're going to combine in this presentation a combination of these values and motives. We're going to bring those forward, and these neuroeconomics, and show you how you can do a better job attracting your ideal candidate once you know who your ideal candidate is. So let's talk about values. Stanford Research Institute breaks them down, and so do we, into 4 primary value sets. So the belonger, the emulator, the achiever, and the societal each have a set of values that dictate their behavior and dictate their thoughts and dictate their emotions and dictate their decisions. We're also going to take a look at resources because buyer motives include what resources we have. We may be highly motivated to buy a business, and we want to do it for all the right reasons. We want freedom, we want more control, we want to be able to have unlimited income. But there is also this other side called risk. How much am I willing to risk of those resources that I have to ultimately get what I want, which is my values? I want these things: freedom, self-expression, money, control, whatever it is I want. I have a certain amount of resources at my disposal, but how much am I willing to risk those resources to get my values? Now, we break it down at Zoracle into 4 primary resources and risks that we're all under. The social resources we have, this is the folks we have around us that support us, that believe in us, that are our cheerleaders, that we're networked with. Social capital, that if we went into business, we could mobilize the social network we have to help us build the business, or at minimum support us in a way that makes some sense. Secondly, it's the emotional capital or resources, and that has to do with my self-confidence and the overall courage that I have to go in business. We all know, if you've been in franchise development for a while, that some folks from an emotional resource perspective don't have the courage and don't have the self-confidence, the belief in themselves that they can do it, nor are they willing to risk doing so because of this lack of confidence. The third piece is the relational piece in terms of resources. The relational piece having to do with the husband, wife, family, the intimate relationships I have where I feel, again, loved and supported, which gives me more power and more ability to do what I need to do. And then finally, of course, the one we always think about, which is the financial resources someone has versus what they're willing to risk. There's no doubt someone can have a ton of dollars but be unwilling to risk very much of it. And the reverse is so true, exactly, right? In that some folks have little money and are willing to risk everything, including mortgage their homes and their firstborn, to have what it is that they want. So it's this balance of resources to risk, which equals ultimately risk tolerance. So let's look at the various value sets The belonger is a guy or gal that's kind of the backbone of America. He's a conservative guy. He's all about family. He's all about dependability. He's all about loyalty and consistency. You know, the God, country, family kind of guy. He goes to work every single day. He doesn't do anything that's silly or frivolous. He's a practical guy. He's a belonger. And these are the values that you see on the screen that affect all of his decisions and the way he spends his money and the way he spends his time and the way he spends his energy. So he's a principled man. He's a proud man. He's a man that comes from a place of duty. He's all about providing and protecting his family and those that he loves. So these are the values that dictate what he's going to buy. So you can begin to see that this belonger is someone that's likely going to last a long time in a franchise system, but he's not necessarily a guy that's going to ramp up well. He's not good at embracing innovation or being an early adopter of anything. He's a steady Eddie who will grow something over time. His motivation isn't to become a millionaire. His motivation is to protect and to provide. That's his drive, and he's going to do it in ethical and principled ways. But let's look at what motivates him from a fear perspective. What risks does he have? The number one fear that a belonger has is the fear of separation from loved ones. The second fear they have is that of being irresponsible, buying a business that jeopardizes the money he and his wife have put aside for Johnny's education. That would be irresponsible. Or making a decision in some way that has him not be able to attend Johnny's soccer games, separating him from the family. And worst case scenario is to do something that ultimately sacrifices his family's financial security. These are huge fears. These aren't small fears. These are huge fears and risks that the belonger deals with every day. So you can imagine the belonger is oftentimes attracted to proven concepts, safe concepts, practical concepts, tangible concepts, concepts that are 9 to 5, concepts where he can bring his spouse into the business at some point where he's not separated from those he cares about and he's providing for. So let's look at some of the resources that the belonger has. From a social perspective, the belonger has an incredible amount of people he's connected to. He knows his neighbors across the street on each side. He knows everyone at church. He is sitting at those PTA meetings. He's going to the football games. Everyone is his friend and he is connected. So he has very high social capital. Emotionally, however, there's a lack of confidence. So it's more like a low to medium. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can take this kind of risk. You know, I've been an executive my whole life. I'm not sure. So this emotional piece is, from a resource perspective, is low to maybe a medium. Relationally, however, belongers make some of the best spouses. So frequently, they're in very strong relationships and strong family ties where they're getting the support that they need. Financially, these are the steady eddies, remember? These are not the guys that are going to be gazillionaires. These guys have low to medium income. So when we look at this from an overall perspective, these are the resources. What is the belonger willing to risk? Financially, not much, right? Relationally, not much. He has high resources, lots of it, but he's not willing to jeopardize one relationship with his son, his daughter, or his wife. This is not something he's willing to risk. Doesn't matter how wonderful the business opportunity is. From an emotional perspective, however, he might be willing to step out in courage and do what is necessary if he sees it is a better option to buy a business to continue on the path that he's on. So let me show you a couple of examples of belongers. So this, if you've seen the whole AT&T series of commercials that's called It's Not Complicated, where there's this guy in a suit, you know, kind of a plain, average, we're not talking superstar, wealthy executive. This is an average-looking guy in an average suit. It's gray with, you know, stripes on his tie, nothing fancy, true belonger look and feel. He's oftentimes in a classroom doing what looks like a focus group. He's having a conversation with 4 or 5 kids about 7 or 8 years old, and he's asking them just basic questions, right? And the kids are answering it, and he's just having this conversation. If you look at the AT&T commercials, you will see that they play to the fear of the belonger. The belonger has this fear of separation. I am now seeing children with a stranger in a room. I am not with my children. They're not in danger. Clearly they're not in danger, but I am separated from them. So there's this feeling of my children are with a stranger and I am separated from them. So this emotionally plays on the belonger. AT&T, by the way, has been using one form or another of this kind of commercial for 40 plus years. Their marketing campaign hasn't changed much. If you recall, in the early days, it was grandma sitting on the porch, all lonely, rocking in her chair, watching the corn grow, and her daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren are way off in a big city somewhere. The separation again, and all of a sudden the phone rings and they are together once again via the phone. So this is a strategy AT&T has used beautifully to trigger the belonger buyer. So everything about these commercials works in terms of the values. It leverages the values of security. It's about saving money. It's about togetherness. It's about consistency. We go to school every day, right? That's consistent. We're also leveraging their high relational resources, their bonds with their family. We are going to throw it right in their face and make them make an emotional connection between my relationship with my children and AT&T. But we're also going to address in the overall, if you listen to the commercial, this low financial resources, save money, do what's smart, be practical. It's all down to earth and sensible, a true belonger commercial. If you get a chance, go on YouTube and check it out. So let's talk about the second group, which is our achiever. The achiever is the guy or gal that's had some level of success. Usually in corporate America of some sort, and he is focused on power. He's a conservative guy too. He's a conventional guy too. The difference is he wants to dominate. He wants to be respected. He wants to be the best. He wants to be unique. It's all about control. It's all about growth for him. He is focused on leaving a legacy and putting marks on the board of achievements where he's hit goal after goal after goal. So he is power-driven. We're talking personal power here. So the achiever, when you think of him, is that Costco buyer that buys because it's economical, but buys in mass quantities because he can afford it and because it makes sense. But at the same time, he's the guy that buys the best and most unique vehicle and has a home in the most unique suburb. Not because it's sexy, but because it has the most resale value. So he's a practical guy like a belonger, but he's about controlling and dominating. So we can see from a business perspective if we bring an achiever on board, this is a guy that's going to grow quickly. He's going to ramp up quickly. He's going to replicate quickly. He's someone that's going to grow as quickly as he possibly can. And he's all about control and dominating and ultimately coming out of there with some residual income and or he's going to exit with some kind of equity. He's going to make some money. But the achiever also has certain fears or risks that they take on a day-to-day basis that motivates them. Whether they're conscious or unconscious of these is not relevant. So the achiever is seriously concerned about not being the best, not being unique. When you see his suit, it is a tailored suit. It is the finest watch. It is the best pair of shoes. Not because it's sexy, but because it's unique and it's best. So he's usually looking for concepts that are also unique and different. Either the products or the services or the business format needs to be somewhat unique. Another fear that he has is not being in control. Yes, the achiever is indeed a control freak. And thirdly, his concern is that he's not going to be able to replicate, that he's going to have walls around him, boundaries, ceilings, whatever it is, and therefore he's not going to be able to leave a legacy. This would not be a good thing for the achiever. So let's look at the overall resources of the achiever. So the achiever has a bit of a harshness to him, right? With the drive, sometimes we're walking over individuals. So there isn't that softness that we saw with the belonger, which also makes his social circle a bit smaller. He'll have a few advisors and people he respects, but he's not usually connected to many below him. It'll be more in the peer arena or a few slightly above him, which he sees as a potential to allow him to go to the next level. So it's a smaller circle of social resources that he has. Yet his emotional resources are extremely high. His confidence is high. He's got a lot of courage. Relationally, again, someone that typically is in a long-term marriage and a relationship, has a couple of children, has strong, income, but honestly, if it makes good sense financially, this is someone who's going to take a risk, counter what the wife might wish, or how it might affect the marriage, or how it might affect the children. That doesn't mean he doesn't calculate it, but it's not something that is as prominent as what we saw with the belonger. So low to medium relational resources. Financially, he's got medium to high financials, usually a good solid 401k, good equity in his home, good income, and of course, based on all this, the risks that he is taking, his risks are much more in the financial area. He's going to be much more cautious in that area than in the others. He's willing to risk his social network. He's willing to risk his relational situation and his resources. But when it comes to his emotional, he is not going to go into something where he's not respected and he has control and it's unique. He's not going to compromise this power position that he's in to take something that is what he perceives as not measuring up to who he is. Let's look at an achiever advertisement. This, as you can see, is Rolex. Rolex does it incredibly well for the achiever, as well as what we're going to see here shortly for the emulator. So what we see here is the Rolex playing on this fear of not leaving a legacy. It is subtle in the timeless timepiece. It is actually said twice. Listen, Mr. Achiever, this watch will make you timeless. You are going to leave a legacy. And this frequently does happen with Rolexes, where it's passed on from generation to generation. So we're playing on this fear by bringing that up. The piece is a conservative piece. It's organized, it's strong, it's precise, it's not frou-frou, it's just, you know, as simple as it can possibly get. But it leverages the values that the achiever has: power, uniqueness, control. Everything about this graphic says quality and achievement. So it's a perfect graphic to pull the achiever in. And then, of course, it also leverages the high emotional and financial resources. It pulls on that emotional side that says, I am confident, I have accomplished, you know, I deserve kind of mentality. And it also pulls on the financial resources. You can afford it. You've earned this kind of a thing. So moving to the societal is a purpose-driven individual. This is a guy or gal who goes into business because they want to make a difference. They are really focused on having an impact and empowering others. Their true joy comes from seeing others succeed. They love freedom. They love harmony. They're all about diversity and equality. They're hungry for knowledge, and then they take that knowledge and then they offer it back to others, their employees, the community, back to the franchisor. So this is a purpose-driven individual, typically innovative, well-educated, and of the four groups, financially and educationally, they have the most resources, more degrees and more money than the other three groups. So they're coming from a different place. It's no longer about expressing power or control or providing and protecting. It's now about a self-expression and allowing others to be empowered through a level of knowledge that they have. Fears. The societal fears and the societal risks that they encounter on a day-to-day basis. Their fear is that they will be ignorant or in some way lack knowledge. Worse, their ignorance or lack of knowledge will place them in a situation where we can manipulate them, where we can in some way manipulate them to make a decision, go into a business, which ultimately prevents them from being able to make a difference. So everything is filtered through these fears of not being manipulated, wanting to make a difference, and gathering as much information as possible so then that can be imparted onto further generations or individuals that will be empowered by using that information. So let's look at the resources of the societal. The resources of a societal from a social perspective, from that social capital, is medium to high. They typically are sitting on many boards and committees and are well connected in the world of medicine, in the world of education, and in the world of health, you name it, even politics. The social group that they're running with is a high-level group, and the social capital is massive. Imagine being able to exploit that social network that they have. Emotionally, much like the achiever, they have strong confidence and strong courage. Relationally, more medium in this area. You would think, considering they're very heart-based, that this would be high, but the reality is, relationally, they have a few very, very close folks. The rest are people that they're mentoring or advising or encouraging, but not someone in their inner circle. So the relational piece tends to be medium and sometimes even to a small. Financially, we talked about that. They have high financial resources from the ability to risk. When we look at the societal, they are willing to risk their emotions. They're willing to look like idiots. They're willing to fail. They're willing to risk this emotional side as much as possible, as long as they get their higher values, which is make a difference, be an example, etc. Financially, same way. High ability to risk, because it's just money, and to them, there's things that are much more important. So commercial. To give you an example of what we're talking about here, a societal commercial. This is a company that markets pajama bottoms or pajamas in general. They suggest that these pajamas are made in India for women that have been pulled out of sex trafficking circles. This gives them a job, it gives them a level of freedom, and it gives them self-dignity back. So the whole focus of this company is on providing pajamas to other parts of the world made in India. So this is an excellent example of pulling on the societal values and fears. It plays on the fear of ignorance, where if I'm a societal and I'm not aware of this sex trafficking and that 2 million women in India alone are sex trafficked, then I'm going to feel embarrassed and ignorant and like, holy moly, what can I do to make a difference? So it pulls at that heartstring. The visuals pull at diversity, inequality, and it downplays that you're actually buying stuff here. They're selling you something at a price that is much higher than what you could get, you know, at Macy's or Walmart or wherever you shop, right? But it downplays this consumerism because in the eye of the societal, this is not a cool thing. But it leverages their values, contribution. I can buy these pajamas and I can make a contribution. I can set some women free. I can empower them. I can have an impact by doing nothing more than buying and wearing some pajamas. That's pretty cool, right? So this also leverages their high emotional and financial resources. The price points can be higher because we're dealing with values that have great value. I guess that's a good word to use. And it also brings in the leveraging of their high emotional state, a willingness to not look cool in the most hip outfit. And instead, I'm going to wear something made in India that may not be of the same quality that I can get somewhere else, but I'm willing to compromise emotionally to do that because I'm having a greater impact. Let's look at the final group, and then I want to start giving you some examples here. The emulator is a passion-driven individual. He loves diversity, variety. He needs things that are flexible. He's extremely money-driven and sex appeal-driven. He needs autonomy and independence and enjoys and thrives on anything that is competitive and has a fabulous challenge around it. So he's a guy that's an early adopter. He's a guy that has incredible amounts of energy. One day he's on the mountaintop skiing, the next day he's motorcycling, and the next day he's windsurfing. This is a guy that can take on just about any kind of a situation. And the way he buys and the way he makes decisions is based on these values. So you can see if I'm operating from these values where success and prestige and money is something that's important to me, I'm likely, if I'm an emulator, going to be buying things slightly beyond my means, if not a lot beyond my means. I'm going to buy a car that I'm going to have to lease because I can't afford the payments any other way. I'm going to live in a neighborhood that's slightly outside of my true financial situations. I'm going to be wearing the most trendy, sexy outfits because I'm an emulator. I want to look like the achievers look. The emulator is emulating the achiever. And of course, he loves anything that's competitive. This gives him a lot of joy. But he too has some risks associated to this. So the risks and fears he's dealing with is the fear of being embarrassed. This is huge for the emulator. The fear of feeling or being incompetent or inadequate, and ultimately the fear of failure. This is a guy who cannot do something if in any way he will look stupid or incompetent or inadequate. So he will oftentimes overcompensate, do things 3 times when it only requires 1, or he will avoid situations that would allow any kind of incompetence or inadequacy to bubble up, because he wants to make sure you don't see it. And certainly he doesn't want to be embarrassed. Frequently covering when he does make mistakes by pointing fingers in other directions, or compensating for it by doing things again and again. So these are the fears that he's dealing with. Let's look at his resources. The emulator is highly networked. He is a lovable guy. He is someone that's extremely persuasive, and he is highly networked, has an unbelievable social network, and his capital, and should he choose to cash it in, his social capital is massive. Emotionally, some insecurities, right? There's a little lack of confidence. He comes across as arrogant, though, right? But underneath this is tender underbelly that says, I don't know if I have what it takes. It's a emotional side that is cautious about stepping into anything that might risk that. Relationally, low to medium. This is a non-committal kind of guy. He likes his autonomy. He likes his freedom. He likes his flexibility. This is a guy that's going to buy or be a part of something where he doesn't have to make a huge commitment to his time, money, and energy. He needs things to flow and kind of go with him. Financially, he's an up and coming. Someday he'll be there, but today he's living on the edge financially. Now the good news is the emulator frequently is so well connected and comes across as so capable, which is the opposite of a seer, right? That he frequently will have within his circle of influence folks that are willing to invest in him. Emulators tend to ramp up faster than any group in a franchise system, but our research has shown they don't last as long. They don't like it when it becomes a management business and it becomes a little bit redundant and we're doing the same thing day in and day out. This is actually one of my favorite commercials, an emulator commercial by Old Spice. Years ago, Old Spice was sold to a middle-aged and older man, an average Joe, right? And then all of a sudden, some smart marketing firm came in and completely rebranded and refreshed this Old Spice and made it the sexiest aftershave you could ever imagine. So get online and watch these videos, and there's a series of them, and they are absolutely blowing things away in terms of growing market share with the series of commercials, because they know who they're going after. They are going after the emulator, the wannabe, the guy that wants to be a man, the guy that wants to be potent, the guy that wants to be successful, the guy that loves a little competition, right? So this is a great example of playing on the fear of an emulator, not only knowing that I'm selling to the emulator because it's a perfect emulator commercial, but playing to the fear, triggering the inadequacy button again and again and again. Anything is possible if you smell like a man. And he talks frequently about, you know, if you were this kind of man, if you were that kind of man, you would be able to do this, you know, have a yacht, ride a horse, buy diamonds, etc., etc. So it's a great commercial to highlight all of these fears and all of the values. Emulators need a lot of movement and a lot of change. If you watch the commercials, you'll see the scene changes dramatically every few seconds, and it's a different thought, and you're bouncing from one idea to another idea. Nothing is linear. It's all moving. And we're leveraging his values around money and sex appeal and variety and competition and success again and again. And we're also leveraging his low relational resources, saying, listen, you know, because this is a man talking to a woman in the commercial saying, women, if your man smelled like a man, he would look like me. And so the whole point being is the emulator has low relational skills and connections, yet they long for it. So here, just put on some Old Spice, and voila, your relationships, like magic, will be fixed. So I'm going to open this up in just a few seconds to some questions, but I wanted to address a couple of more little things around shapes, lines and colors, knowing that we're pushing both the values, but we're also at the same time needing to be cognizant of the fonts, the colors, the graphics, the layouts that we are using. The bellonger, of course, being much more practical. So the colors we're going to be using are the gray undertones, such as navy, gray, khaki, and tan. Get online, look at Dollar Shave Club, their website and their videos. It's a great example of a belonger going towards Emulator video, addressing the simplicity of paying just a few bucks and getting your razors. Everything about this says belonger, from the wood versus chrome or platinum or even some kind of jewel tone. This is, down home wood kind of thing. The guy has a sleeve rolled up. He's wearing jeans. He is in a warehouse pushing cardboard boxes. Belonger, 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 all over the place. So this is a good example. This is actually a client of ours, Bare Bones Workwear. I don't know if they're here today. Great website, a true belonger website. Their top performer is likely a belonger achiever. So this is a great example of hard-working gear that works hard. It's all about duty. It's all about being practical. So we can see this is a great example of a belonger. Achiever recommendations. We're going to be using clear, clean colors, jewel tones, whites, blacks. So we want white or blue undertones in our colors. We want to use less pictures, more graphs, more charts, all showing those same values: control, power, quality, uniqueness. If we look at this sample, we got a spit-polished surface here. We got a pen that's a $300 pen in that man's hand. He's wearing a nice suit, a nice tie. You can see in the background this is a large conference room. He's in control. So this is a good example of an achiever type of website in this case. Now, just the other day, in fact, I shared this with a few of you, we got a video in from Kona Grill, a great franchise concept, and it was a franchise development video. Well put together, well scripted. The videography was beautiful. However, when we watched it, and get a second and watch it, it was focused on the 30-year-old. Many of the shots were mostly women, what you're kind of seeing here, right? And the shots were all emulator, fast, flashing lights, alcohol, partying, diversity, but this up-and-coming, trendy, sexy kind of feeling throughout the video. And yet my guess is Kona Grill, like many franchise concepts that are food-based like this, especially high-end food, is likely an achiever societal business. The video, on the other hand, was directed at, the verbiage was directed at, and the videography was directed at the emulator. So this is an example of needing to focus on consumer-based marketing is different than franchisee marketing. Who you're going after is not necessarily the consumer. In some concepts it is. But in this Kona Grill concept, I would venture to say that it is not the emulator that A, can afford this concept, nor would they run it because it's too boring on a day-to-day basis. It's just not something that they would be interested in. So we want to make sure we separate how we market to our consumers, who could be different than who our ideal candidate is. Societals. Societals, again, clean, unpretentious, avoid anything modern, minimize any kind of bolding, keep the colors softer, watercolors, earth tones, gray and yellow undertones, focus on their values again, and their motivations and their fears. This is a client of ours, Wild Birds. In fact, I just pulled this up a few minutes before we went into class to show you how unpretentious and simple this site is. It's anything but sexy, right? But we have those muted kind of water color tones. The focus is not on the owner. It's not on him. It's about others. It's about the bird. We have some historical perspective. This is almost a hippie looking kind of individual who's out there feeding the birds. This is a concept that is a societal concept. We've done a top performer model on wild birds, and this website is a good example of unpretentious, softer with the earth tones and the watercolors that would attract societals, and Wildbird does an excellent job attracting their ideal candidate. Let's get to the last one, and then we'll open up to questions, Aubrey. The emulator. Here's a great example. What you're looking at is Max Muscle. This is their website. We can see the muscles. The emulators are about sex appeal and competition and winning and, you know, all of those kinds of things. So this is a great example of an emulator type of site that Max Muscle has put up. I wanted to share with you something because this is also about words. And this is not copy that I wrote. This is copy that Rachel Washington wrote from Burrisland Marketing. And this is for a burger concept called BGR. So let me read it to you. This is a true bottom line emulator copy. We are the best. Remember, emulators are about the best. Burger concept you've never heard of. I'm going to be the first. This is so cool. Our food has been winning. Oh, good. I get to win too. Awards for years. We're that good. And with food that good, we wanted our brand, from the design of our restaurants to the customer experience, to be just mind-blowing. Great emulator word. So we went to the folks responsible for some of America's most iconic, again, it's about being bigger than life and being more than I am, and successful brand, Street Sense. The branding powerhouse, great word, has developed distinctive brands and experiences for Starbucks, Chipotle, and now, lucky us, BGR. Innovation is our lifeblood. Remember, emulators are innovative. And quality is what turns a biter burger into a passionate love affair. They're all about passion, right? If you're looking for a safe, bland, boring, off-the-shelf burger franchise, we're not it. Okay, we're hitting the pain. You don't want boring. You like diversity. You like variety. You don't want something off the shelf. You want something that's going to stand out and make you special at the country club. If you're an innovator, a maverick, an adventure seeker, let BGR be your muse. Your top drawer, we're ground floor. We're looking for visionaries who want to make their mark and etch their names in neon. You're not just another franchisee. You're an indispensable partner and pioneer. You bring smarts. Remember, they're afraid of being incompetent and being embarrassed, passion, and an entrepreneurial spirit into the investment. Your top drawer, we're ground floor. Let's start a revolution. Perfectly written emulator copy by Rachel that will attract. Now, in this case, Rachel designed this in such a way that not only did she take into consideration that the ideal franchisee within BGR is an emulator. It's a concept where they're not cooking, okay? They're not running that day-to-day kind of stuff. So, and also took into consideration this is a stage 1 franchise concept, 9 locations and growing. It's a small concept with high risk. It's going to require someone that's okay with not being a brand. They get to be the important person. So she took that into consideration in writing this copy. So Aubrey, let's open it up for some questions. I could go on and on about this topic, but let's do that, hon.